All right, we are back on What the Funk. It's a Friday, beautiful Friday here in Colorado. It's finally fall. Let me check the temperature real quick. 62 degrees, partly sunny with the podcaster voice. This is my favorite time of year. It's my favorite season. I did hear though that Houston's still like in the 90s. It's crazy.
It is 86 right now.
That's more tolerable, I would say.
Yeah, it is.
You can work with 86. I'm actually headed to Houston next week. So when this podcast drops, I'll be in your hood. Got a conference and some meetings downtown.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Which I'm looking forward to. I've done a good job the past few years of avoiding Houston in the summer. All I hear about, and Houstonians are pretty like tolerable to the heat. But even these past few years, you have to be. People have been complaining about it though. Last couple of years.
It's been brutal. It has been brutal, no doubt.
It's hot. And I'm like such a Yankee, right? So it's just too cold.
Yes, I agree.
Where I'm from, down there, it's too hot. So Colorado's like a good balance for me. Yeah. But anyways, Mark D'Alessio, you're just one of those guys that everybody likes. You know, that's been kind of my impression of you.
That's pretty flattering.
It is. You're just you're a likable guy. You're a partnerships guy. You're knowledgeable as it relates to business and oil and gas. And also, I just wanted to say thank you for being flexible. My business right now is going ham. It's going ham, man. Summer was slow. I was like, what is going on? And ever since the calendar turned to September 1st, all of a sudden it's just been gangbusters. And now I'm like, all right, I got to staff up. And we're placing people on the recruiting side and bringing on some super cool innovators. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Different challenges, right? I think any services-based company deals with the roller coaster. And now I'm thinking like summers, I'm just gonna like go off the map in July. Just be like, you know what? We're not gonna get anything done this month, so I'm stepping away. But now I know I couldn't take any time off now. But thank you for being flexible. We moved this one around a little bit. I'll hit you with the question that I hit all of my guests with. Who are you? Who is Mark D'Alessio?
Oh, geez, it could be a long answer. Let's go here. So, born and raised a Yankee like you, right? So, born and raised in New Jersey.
Oh yeah,
from birth until about 30, give or take. Then I spent about 5 or 6 years in Florida, which prepped me for the for the Houston weather. So I was in Southeast Florida. Loved it. It was great. And then made the change over to Houston in 2000, very late 2010, 2011.
Oh, so this hasn't been that long for you. I mean, I guess
about 15 years. Yeah, exactly.
And what brought you to Houston? Well, what brought you to Southeast Florida from Jersey? And then what brought you from Florida to Houston?
Yeah, absolutely. So the move to Florida, I was working and traveling a lot for work, right? So really I was doing consulting, and I could have been anywhere as long as I was by an airport. Now, I will preface this with saying it would have been better if it was a major airport, but I decided that Palm Beach would probably do well enough. It was fun. It was great living, but being a traveler, a lot of connections. So that was that move. And then I tried the old, well, what can I do next? So Houston made sense. It had the major airport. So that was kind of the next move in the cycle.
Got it. Let's go back to Jersey a little bit. So where in Jersey are you from? Did you go to college in Jersey? Was that kind of what your path was?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in a town called Kearney, New Jersey, which no one outside the Northeast really knows. But if I tell you it's very close to Hoboken, a lot of people know that, right? Because they know Hoboken well. Real blue collar town, right? It's one of those towns where, generally speaking, I'd say 80% of the people really never leave. If you know what I'm saying, it was one of those kind of areas, very blue collar, as I mentioned. Went to college, not far away in Union, New Jersey, and stayed. But it was funny because right off the bat, it's weird. growing up, I couldn't wait to get out. Then as you get older, sometimes you get a little sentimental about it, shall we say?
Yeah, yeah. No, we could talk about Jersey for a while. So, I'm from New Hampshire and went to college in Boston. My dad is from New Brunswick.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
Highland Park.
I know,
and went to Rutgers.
Oh, okay.
Long line of family. His dad, my grandfather, worked at Rutgers. My dad and his brothers went to Rutgers. So I grew up, making that drive down from New Hampshire and spending time in New Brunswick, and also like have a lot of friends in Philly. So I've spent time on the Jersey Shore. I like New Jersey. I have some in-laws that live there. They're over in Red Hook. They live, kind of by the water.
Yeah,
Jersey's a beautiful state. And of course, like, I'm assuming you're an Italian guy.
Of course, yeah.
there's many of them. The Italian food there, the pizza is as good as it gets, right? So
close to Hoboken.
Close to Hoboken means you were actually close to New York City too.
Very close. I used to tell people this is not an exaggeration. From my parents' driveway to parking the car in Times Square was 11.5 miles. So I always say for people from Houston, the Woodlands is farther from downtown Houston than I was from New York City growing up. Yeah, I mean, you could see, from my high school windows, you could see the Statue of Liberty and the World Trade Center as clear as a bell, Empire State Building. Absolutely. It was very close. And we took advantage of it, not as probably as much as I should have, but it wasn't uncommon, certainly in your post-college days when you had a little bit of money, not to, hey, let's go into the city, as we call it. Let's go into the city for dinner, for drinks. Absolutely.
Yeah, like a true bridge and tunnel kid.
Right.
I forget where we were because I had to pause the podcast for a second, but I wish everybody could have heard this. So Mark's son, I think it's your son, right?
It's my step-grandson. Step-grandson. Okay.
Your step-grandson is making his way into your office and making noise and really wanted your attention. So I said, hey, hold on. I got to pause this. I paused the podcast. If everybody could have heard the jersey that just came out in Mark D'Alessio, that would have just covered everything that we've been talking about. It was absolutely perfect.
I wouldn't have to say anything else except you hear that could be, he's from Northern New Jersey. He's an Italian guy from Northern New Jersey. Definitely. That would have.
What'd I say?
Yeah, exactly.
Put your room. That was great. That was funny.
Sometimes you got to bust it out. Sometimes you got to bust it out, Jeremy. You know what I'm saying? You have to.
In moments of authority, right? You got to do it. But no doubt. I love New York City too. Like I think Jersey in general, we talked a little bit about that. New York, just such an incredible city. I don't get there nearly as much, which is a shame because now I actually have more money than when I used to go there as a young buck. And literally, I just remember that we always say this: the 20s just fly out of your wallet there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
When you're in cabs and then you're going subway and meals, and my God, it's just the money. I mean, you have a blast, but the money just flies out. I think you probably had it nice. You said 11 and a half miles, true bridge and tunnel kid, like I was saying,
exactly.
But able to enjoy the city as well. So you finish up college, right? And you decide, all right, I'm gonna stay home. What did you do for work? Like, what were your kind of initial career ventures?
Yeah, so I laugh at that because probably typical anybody from that came of age in the late early 90s. I wanted to be on Wall Street, right? So, hey, I saw wanted to build the whole stockbroker thing and Wall Street, and then you get out and you realize, hey, what those jobs entail, and so it's not as glamorous as you think. So I was a finance major coming out of undergrad, and didn't know what I was going to do with that. Thought the whole Wall Street thing. Ended up getting into corporate treasury, and really, really loved it. It was kind of, you get to use your finance, you get to use your accounting. To me, it's a great way to learn about the business in general, know what that company is, right? And so that's what I did. I ended up working for Burson Marsteller, who at the time was the largest public relations firm in the world. They were owned by Young and Rubicam, the advertising agency. So I worked in New York City, 230 Park Avenue South, still remember it. But my joke was, I think the job cost me money because, I was on entry-level salary, commuting into New York, I had to pay the commuter tax, New York City tax, Jersey. Yeah, it was it wasn't a financial whirlwind by any means, but it was fun.
Yeah, that's funny. This is bringing me way back. Like, like you, right? I was stayed in like a very small area, New Hampshire, and then Boston, and my mom was from that area, and it was just comfortable, right? But I had this itch at about 22, 23 years old. I want to do something different. I want to move somewhere else. So I explored like different opportunities in different places. And one of those was like some of the guys I went to college with had started up a recruiting agency based in New York City. I think like Park Ave area. And, it was recruiting, right? So it was a lot of like commission based stuff. I was like, man, this would be so cool. The energy is great. These guys are making money when they place an executive in, healthcare or whatever it is that they're doing. But I'm like, yeah, but it's going to take me a few months to get set up. And I got nothing to my name. So like, I remember the offer that they made. They're like, so we'll pay you like a stipend of like, I don't know, it was like $1,000 a month, but you get to live with us rent free in our apartment. And I'm like, but now I just feel like I'm kind of owned.
Right? Well, yeah,
like, you're not paying me anything.
Oh, that's
what my whole life looks like, right? Because I'm living with you. I'm just like, it just seems risky.
Yes. That I agree. Although you could argue that the rent-free in New York has some value, but I totally agree with you. I would have been like, no, that's like indentured servitude in a way, or indebted. Or, no doubt.
Yeah, I thought it was funny, right? And I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't have experience recruiting. They're like, you can talk to people. You're good. You're good. You got it. They're like slick New Yorkers. It would have been a much different life path for me, but I'm sure I would have run out of money very, very quickly, or been like, I need to live in Jersey and take the train over. But so that's cool. So you went the finance route, totally logical, right? Because that was like Gordon Gekko,
that's
phase
totally,
of things,
that's
right?
Totally what it was. Yeah, right. Everybody saw that movie, and it was the late go-go. I graduated high school in '87. I guess I am not that old, but that was the go-go. That's what everybody wanted to do, right? Everybody thought that was going to be the life, no doubt.
I get it. I mean, I remember watching that early in my sales career too, and the whole lunches for wimps and all this. And I'm like, this is great. I want to be one of those guys, but I don't want to live in New York City. I want to go hiking on the weekend and live out here. Go skiing and live in Colorado. But
no doubt.
So so you lived in Jersey, you commuted into New York, you got into the corporate treasury finance side of things.
Yes.
And then consulting. So still no oil and gas yet. Right?
No. Oil and gas came much later. So I ended up having a couple of corporate treasury jobs, and I really liked it. And I get a call from a recruiter, and they said, "How would you like to be a treasury consultant?" And I remember thinking, I was probably late 20s at the time, yeah. And I was like, this would be so. You hear about consulting, and I'm like, this is going to be great, and traveling, and expense account, and so. I ended up getting a job. It was actually treasury software implementation. So I was a PS person. So it wasn't true consulting, but I loved it. It was that's how I got into software. It was fantastic. It was with a New Zealand. There we go.
Hey man, we're recording this from our home offices. We're good.
Okay. So the dog's not happy. So ended up going. It was a New Zealand company that was coming to the U.S. and just starting up, and they had an incredible product. Took the market by storm. They ended up getting bought out by SunGard, which was at the time a huge financial software company, and I was there for just under 16 years. Via acquisition, and I loved it. It was great. And so I worked my way up the ranks, kind of like you with recruiting. You're working with PS, you're working with the salespeople, the sales managers, and had different roles. And of course, you hear all the time, "Hey, you can talk. You'd be great in sales, right?" Yeah, you know the space. And I had no sales experience whatsoever, but I remember there was a kind of a reorg, and there was a woman who I worked with who was one of the regional sales managers. She became a VP of sales. So her old RSM job opened up, and she offered me, "Hey, would you want to take it? I think you'd be great at this." And I'm like, all right, you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. And that was my segue into. So that was in 2004. So I when I was at that fintech software company, so I did everything basically you could do. Right, I did implementations, I did pre-sales, I did kind of like what we'd go in and do post client audits to make sure they're using the system correctly, and then got into the sales. Right, and it was, I don't want to say duck to water, but I did take to it. I did take to it pretty easy. I think what made me successful was like, and I've used this line a lot. And it's not a lie; it's really true. I'd be able to tell people, I sat in your seat, right? So I know what you're doing to try to get your job done every day, and I understand it. And I think I was solution selling before I knew what solution selling was, in the sense of, hey, I know what your pain is. Let's solve it together. So that was that's how I ended up there. Yeah, no doubt. So I was there, like I said, for about just under 16 years. Yeah.
Wow. And then is that what led you into oil and gas, or did something happen?
No. So I had done that for a while, and just like, I think everybody goes through a point in their life, right? Where you think, okay, I want to try something new, something different. I love sales, but let's see what's going on out here. There was some consolidation in the fintech spaces and so forth. So ended up, there was an opportunity I saw with a recruiter to go and join a company we both know really well. At the time, was still called P2 Energy Solutions, and that was great. That's kind of where I cut my teeth. Yeah, that was my first oil and gas job. Working with Mary and Kyle and the team there, the few people who aren't there any longer. But that's kind of where I didn't know anything about oil and gas, right? Knew how to sell, and kind of picked it up and learned it. And it's not, I tell people it's not extreme. It's weird. It's kind of a twist. It's not really difficult, but it's very difficult if depending on what aspect you're looking at. But I thought upstream was exciting. That's where I learned it.
Yeah, I mean, and P2, so your background did lead pretty nicely to that, with the finance and accounting background, the ability to do sales and sales engineering. And like you said, sitting in the seats of the people that you're doing a demo to. Granted, not in oil and gas, but still
Correct.
in a
it related somewhat,
type of
yes.
role. And you immediately, like what happened for me, there's some parallels here. My first job in oil and gas tech was with Bolo. So this was pre acquisition. It was WellPoint Systems had just merged or acquired Bolo.
Right.
It was headquartered here in Colorado, but also had a Houston office. And P2 was just the devil, right? It was like Bolo versus Excalibur, and we're going to put these guys out of business. And then suddenly there's all these rumors of we're for sale, right? Bolo's going to be acquired. And then the rumors start to intensify. It actually looks like it's going to be P2. I'm like, what? Like,
isn't that funny?
This is the enemy. Like, I wake up every day like I want out for their blood, you know. And now you're telling me we're going to be on the team. And I made a career pivot and decided to go to Energy Navigator at the time. I liked the company culture. I liked what they were doing. I just had my first kid, so there was a little more certainty than going through an acquisition and all that stuff. But I often do wonder, like, what my career may have looked like had I gone to P2. Right. Would I still be there? Would I be the Mary or Kyle? Would I be on the team? Would I have gotten to know somebody that was in the PE portfolio and go do sales at a different company? Like, it would have taken a different path. But I remember those early days. This is probably 2011, 2012, where P2 people would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, Jeremy Funk, like, you have so many notes in our Salesforce. Like, I feel like I know you."
Yes, absolutely.
And that was my first foray into, like, you got to be careful what you put into CRM, right? A meeting goes badly, somebody treats you like crap. Like, you don't know who's going to be looking at that data that you input.
Totally. I mean, I find sales is a small world and oil and gas is a smaller world. So you come across the same people over and over, no doubt. Well, I had a very similar.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sorry. I had a very similar. So I was with P2 for a short period and then ended up getting what I consider, a great blessing. And I got to work over at Oil Decks for Chris Stanklewicz. And, I can't speak. I know that's how I met you, was actually Chris told me to reach out when I got there. I said,
Remember
pick
that?
Jeremy's brain on some things. But yeah, so I got to work at Oil Decks with Chris, which was again great. He was amazing to work for. I can't speak highly enough of him. So I was with Oil Decks I was there for a short period, and then interestingly, the devil, which was open invoice, right? We were spend work with their open invoice. We were back, and I'll step back. It was a great fit for me because of the whole accounting, accounts payable. Oil Decks was just a great fit. What I had learned at P2 on oil and gas, able to incorporate, and then we became part of. We acquired Oil Decks. It's so funny how this happens. Chris left, right, and went to Drilling Info. Well,
Yep.
full circle, Drilling Info acquired Oil Decks, and so I got to spend some time back with him again, which I was really fortunate about. So I love those guys, and I can't say enough about them. It's great folks.
So that was like Rick Slack and
Yeah,
Mike Weiss
absolutely,
and
yes.
Chris. Yeah, so the same guys that were running Bolo when I was there and built a great culture. Chris was a really great, I'd say, kind of like early career mentor for me. He came on this podcast and I thanked him, and I do thank him profusely for being like the first sales manager I had that allowed me to be creative within the confines of a corporate environment, which I think he probably has to toe a fine line with a little bit more with the size of Inveris and being the CRO over there. But
exactly
the way to structure deals and the way to build relationships with people and cultivate a level of trust were things that I took as a 29-year-old or whatever and have applied throughout my career. And yeah, he knew, like, Chris is a smart guy, right? He's like, you're a hard worker. Like, I want to bring you back. And he was trying to recruit me over to Oil Decks for a while and get really creative with me in terms of how he was structuring it. I was like, man, I've got a good job right now. Like, it would be really hard for me to leave. And then ultimately he goes to DI and it's like, I got a spot on my capital markets team over here. So he's probably pitching you and pitching me on taking the same kinds of jobs, right? So, Oil Decks, Oil Decks, as you mentioned, like, yeah, you were going head to head with Open Invoice, and then ultimately you got smushed together with them, right?
Correct, and not successfully head to head. I mean, they, Open Invoice. It was funny, once the acquisition was done and we got to see what was under the hood. I'm like, oh, now I see why you guys are winning all these deals.
Isn't that funny?
It was. I'm like, oh yeah, it makes sense now. But it was a Christmas. But yeah, absolutely, we were, people who, you would pass, they'd be coming out of the demo, we'd be going into one, and then suddenly you're in meetings or having dinner with them. It was an interesting concept, no doubt.
Yeah, consolidation is not just a major part of oil and gas on the operator producer side. It is very much so on the tech side as well.
Oh, no
so
doubt.
That's kind of funny. So did you stick around with Open Invoice for a while, or whatever the new company was when you got acquired?
Absolutely. So I was with probably another three years after that. So through Oil Decks to the acquisition of Open Invoice, the acquisition, which was Drilling Info at the time, now Inveris, the name change. So yeah, probably about 3 or 4 years with that company. And again, going back to what you said, there's things that I'm on sales, whether it's structuring a deal, pitching a deal, that I still hear Chris's voice, in my head. And he was like, the echo, I don't beat a dead horse here, but he was a great mentor, not just professionally, but also personally. So, a lot of the stuff he taught me, I still incorporate. So I was there for about 3 years. Then, I kind of say I kind of went into the wilderness, and I'll be, pretty candid here with you. I did something really stupid where I started chasing equity. Right. And I always say sometimes I always say you got to get kicked in the teeth to realize you don't like it. Right? You might be like, oh, what? Kicking in the teeth doesn't sound that bad. You get kicked in the teeth, like, I don't like it. And I made, just a couple bad decisions. And ended up, one of them was with just, a company where the CEO is basically a sociopath. So I'm like, this isn't going to work. And not in oil and gas. So I just want to make sure that this was not an oil and gas company. So I decided, all right, let's get back to what I like to do. Right. And just with same thing with OilX and Inveris. I started out in a sales role, right, direct sales. Went into partnerships, so that's where I kind of met a lot of the. I think I met you through that when I was working there. So I did a lot of that. Decided, hey, I want to get back after I did the stupid equity chasing. I decided I wanted to get back to a large company that's been around for a while, right? So I had some large companies been around for a while.
Yeah.
I want to get back to being an individual contributor, someone who, treats that from what I, at least during the interview process, you could see, looks like they treat their people well. And it was a perfect storm. Esri was hiring right here in Houston, and April of 2022, I got the job with 23, excuse me, 23. I got the job with them. So
relatively, a year and a half
at
Esri.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk about Esri a little bit, but I still want to go back a little bit more.
Yeah, no worries.
Like, what is it like for the sales guy to? So you're at a company called OilDex, right? You're selling SpendWorks, and then you get rolled up and acquired or smushed together with a competitor. And now you're at Open Invoice, and then Open Invoice gets rolled up, acquired by Drilling Info, which becomes Inveris. Like, what was that like? That just feels crazy to me for somebody who I don't love change. I think all of us, like, we like to in sales, yes, there's a level of discomfort, especially early on in a job. They're drinking from the fire hose. You're figuring out the new products, your territory, systems, value props, pricing, all of those things. But you do like to find a comfort zone eventually. What was that like in that period of a few years, getting rolled up and acquired so many times?
Yeah, it's funny. I think the biggest adjustment, out of all those changes, was the, us OilDex buying Open Invoice, right? Because they're like probably like you went through when you hear about P2 Bolo, Excalibur Bolo. You're being merged with people that you're out, dogfighting with every day, competing with. That's extremely difficult. I think what made it, I don't like change either. I hate change. I think what made it somewhat easier, Jeremy, is everybody in kind of oil and gas being such it's a large industry, but it's a small knit community. They were familiar with what was going on, right? I think a lot of them knew Drilling Info. So that was a nice thing. Hey, we went from being smaller OilDex, and now we're part of the Drilling Info family. That opened some doors. The Inveris name change, I think, was pretty well publicized. I think, they went out and spent a lot of money doing that. So it wasn't as difficult as as you might imagine. I think had we been in maybe a different space where not everyone kind of is as connected, that might have been tough. But no, it was in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't overly difficult. It wasn't. Did I like doing it? No, of course not, because I hate change like you. But we rolled with it.
Yeah, and ultimately you kept getting rolled into bigger companies. But I could also see then the wild goose chase for equity, because there's probably people in those organizations getting massive cash bonuses, right, or rolling into massive amounts of stock with the new company and buying second homes or driving
right,
nice Mercedes or BMWs to work, and you're like, hey, wait a second, I was the one that sold all these deals. And what do I get out of it? You get a new job and maybe a new boss, right? And a smaller territory, and you can't do business with all the people you did business. It's hard. It's a lot of adjustment. Totally. So it makes sense to me why you did do a little bit of the equity chase. And I think that we've all sort of seen this happen. I've done that a little bit too, especially for me, like post Seven Lakes, seeing kind of the fast rise of that company and how everything went. I'm like, okay, like now I really want to get like this level of title, this much equity, make it work. The issue with that is not every company's going to win. Like exactly, sometimes those papers, those stock options, those grants aren't worth anything. I mean, and that's the reality. I think most of the time. Every once in a while, though, you get that really crazy big exit. But then, you've got a family, right? You have a mortgage to pay and bills.
Yeah, of course.
And living in Houston. So you found Esri, which is really not finance focused at all. So tell me a little bit about what you do at Esri. Well, first of all, what is Esri? I know what Esri is, at least cursory. I think some of our listeners do. But talk a little bit about Esri, massive global GIS mapping company. But give a little bit of insight, maybe history in the organization. Talk a little bit about what you do at the company.
Yeah, so absolutely. So Esri, right? A lot of people think of it as the quote unquote mapping company, and I'll give you. It's a privately held company. The grandfather or godfather, if you will, of GIS, Jack Dangermond, is the founder. He is still the president. I was on the campus and saw Jack in the cafeteria, right? Him still very heavily involved. Him and his wife, Laura, are still heavily involved. Jeremy, you got to hold on 1 second. You can't do this. Papa. No, Papa. Yeah, so it's a multi-billion-dollar company that's run very family-oriented, like, right? So you still have the founder heavily involved, 100% private. There's no debt, right? So they put a lot back into research and development. So that's kind of from the high level. From the what we do, right? A lot of people think, as I said, think of it as, hey, it's the mapping company, right? And it's so more than that.
Sure.
I guess the best way to put it simply, right, it can take any data. Let's just focus on oil and gas, because as you know, Esri is across multiple industries, federal government, state governments, etc. But in oil and gas, it takes any of the oil and gas data that we're looking at, whether it be in BOLA or Excalibur or Quorum Land or any of the land. It takes that data, and I like to say it can present it in a time and location perspective, right? So it takes that visual. You say, hey, I want to look at what our land, what our acreage looked like in the Permian. I want to look at what it looked like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now, and be able to look at that and slice and dice all that data visually and present it visually to our users. So that's kind of a high level. We can do routing optimization. I would just get probably the oil and gas minutiae here, but the lease roads, right? So there's a lot of mapping where, hey, you're on a main highway, but then you're going to make that turn onto the lease road. Well, we actually can GPS you and map the leased roads, so you know where they are, where the hazards are, what streets you're not allowed to go on, or what roads you're not allowed to go on. So basically, anything where there's oil and gas data that needs to be analyzed, we can do it from a time and place perspective.
Interesting. So, like, when I go on to whatever Waze or Google Maps or Apple Maps or something like that, is that powered by Esri in the background?
No, but no, it's a great question. But I tell you what it is. A lot of the Enverus stuff you'll see at the bottom says powered by Esri.
Powered by Esri, right?
Yeah, basically we had people in the Houston area when we had the power outage with the last hurricane over the summer. If you go to a TXU's website, if you go to a lot of the power companies and you go on their outage grid, it'll say powered by Esri. Yeah. I just know because my son was doing a project for school, the Arlington Cemetery app powered by Esri. So a lot of things behind the scenes are powered, especially in the oil and gas space. A lot of things are powered by Esri in the background. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've like become more attuned with that as I've just looked at more and more oil and gas centric maps, and just looking on the bottom right with that little gray font, like powered by Esri.
Yeah.
So it's a massively large organization. I appreciate you kind of sharing some insights into the culture of it. Your background, of course, finance, accounting, workflows, data exchanges. What are you doing at Esri, man?
Yeah, I am an account manager on the geospatial side, right? And it was interesting because I think, when you're doing finance, we'll say oil and gas, when I first got into it, right? Like you pointed out, it's kind of more on the financial side, right? If you think about BOLO and oil decks and so forth, but you're still picking up a lot of things. I'll tell you one of my favorite ones back at Enverus when they were rolling out field tickets, right? Open ticket. One of the things that was talked about was, hey, one of the largest cause of accidents in the oil field is vehicle crashes, right? Sure. Okay, so open ticket will keep vehicles off the road. Well, when you go to Esri, it's like, hey, remember that we can also now do routing. We call it route optimization, for example, where we could say, hey, you guys have 40 fields here, and you got 6 electricians and 3 other repairmen. Well, why have them driving, passing each other on the road with this route optimization? We can say, okay, here's your fields, here's your workers, here's what work orders have to be done that day, and basically route them effectively without having to while minimizing the driving. So I was able to take that item I learned about open ticket, and it kind of flows. And I'm just using this as an example, flows into what kind of Esri is doing. And there's multiple areas where that's the case. Where hey, this was a finance issue, but it's also an operations issue as well.
Mm. Yeah, I like to call that the Uberization of the oil field, but it could probably
Yes.
be stretched in Esri terms to say the Uberization of everything, right? It's like
Yeah.
something needs to happen in some place. Why are we doing our old school traditional, you just drive the same box or circle
Right.
or triangle every day? There could be somebody that can go and handle that, which, then reduces potential accidents, saves money, is
Totally.
better from an emissions perspective. Like there's a lot of different things. So yeah, what you're talking about is fundamental, I think, to oil and gas, but not just oil and gas, also government for
Uh,
plumbers, for electricians, right? Any sort of larger
yeah.
entity like that. Uh, if they can do more jobs in a day, if they can reduce safety, if they can be more
Yeah.
effective and efficient, that's just good for everybody. It's
Yeah.
good
And
for everybody. So that's cool
totally.
that you take. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, like one of the things also, I'm not trying to sell people from a safety perspective, right? One of the areas we have is we can pull in data from the National Weather Service and be able to say, okay, now I've got people in the field at this site. Oh my gosh, there's um, a, a severe thunderstorm warning. I,
Oh,
yeah, so severe weather storms, where your people are, and be able to reach them. We can also do geofencing, right? So one of the big ones is you have contractors who say, "Oh, I was on the site for 7 hours and did all this work."
right.
Well, now we can prove, hey, via geofencing, no, you weren't on that long. You were on a short period of time, or you weren't at that site at all. You were actually getting a haircut. So yeah, it's not a big brother watching. It's just to make everything more efficient.
Well, there's an element of fraud that you really have to be careful for, which I'm sure for you coming from that corporate
Absolutely, no
treasury
doubt.
and
Yeah.
finance and accounting side of things, it resonates with you. But yeah, I mean, there's an implicit amount of trust in the oil field or any industry that has remote assets. And the geofencing component is a big deal because if you can compare that to the field ticket, it says I was on site for 6 hours. Well, you're
Yeah.
on site for two.
Right.
You're
Exactly.
lying, and that can jeopardize a business opportunity and a job. But to me, it's less big brother, more just fundamental to
Totally agree.
honesty, fairness, and ethical business practices.
Totally agree.
Are you just directly working with Esri in oil and gas?
Yes. So I'm an account manager. I have about 20, 25 oil and gas accounts. Interestingly, right? So most of our almost I would say the oil and gas industry is almost 100% penetrated by Esri in one way, shape, or form. So
For sure.
even though we're quote hunters and farmers, it's mostly for me a farming job, which I love. I actually love that aspect of it. I have great because I have a lot of just the way we broke it down, which I think this is makes perfect sense. Most of our salespeople either in Houston, San Antonio, or Denver, right? But we have
Right.
Oklahoma City, Dallas. So what we've done is I ended up having Pittsburgh. And you say, oh, Mark, you don't live close. Well, I can fly there a lot. And the reason I have it, it makes sense, instead of me flying there on Monday, then a colleague flying there Tuesday, I just go there and see as many of my accounts as possible.
Yeah, it's not a bad flight. I like Pittsburgh
No,
too. It's
I
been a
love it.
while
Yeah.
since I've been, but yeah, the rolling hills near and dear to really both of us being from the
Yes,
Northeast, right?
yes, no
And I
doubt.
think the foliage is nice. It rains a lot more there than here for sure. I think you get
No
a little
doubt.
more rain than we do in Houston, maybe a lot more with the humidity.
Right, right.
I want to shift gears a little bit to um, like reflecting back, right? Like we've gone through your career. It's a fascinating career path that you've taken, and I think it's accumulated nicely to the role that you have. Like I think you're a natural connector with people. I think you're a good listener. You like partnerships. You like relationships.
Mhm.
But looking back, right, looking into the early mid '90s version of Mark DeLessio, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh God, that I've been asked on different things, whether it's internal training. That question comes up, and it's funny. I think the answer changes, right, depending on where you are. But I would say right now, like if you were to ask me that, and I think this will stay true probably for the remainder of my life, not to have been so serious and planned out, right? I think
Ah,
my I think I was very much like, okay, you need to be here professionally and personally, and here professionally and personally, and in each year, if you're not there, oh, you got to hurry up and get there. And I think if I could go back, I would like to be a little bit more spontaneous and quote unquote let it happen. And I think to your point, like by just letting it happen, I ended up at Esri where I love the solution, I love the company, I love the people I work with. That kind of just let it happen, right? It wasn't I didn't plan to go, hey, I'm going to be at Esri by the time I'm so and so. But I think when I was younger, I was way way too planned out.
yeah, I like that. And it has me thinking a little bit about myself too. And I think part of that is just the environment that you're in, right? Like your first job out of school, you're on Wall Street, right? And I think a lot of
No,
people that do that, they intend to have a plan. And maybe that plan entails a
well,
house in the Hamptons or living in Greenwich or working 80-hour weeks. And you quickly
right.
realize, okay, best plans go to waste like pretty fast.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I wanted to be on Wall Street, but I was with the doing Treasury, but no, in New York City. But to your point, yes. I always say, once you saw what that was entailed, you're like, maybe this isn't what I want to be doing. Yeah, but even like personally, I remember thinking, all right, you have to be, do this, and you have to be have your own your first house by this age, and then your next big house by. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, I think that's a recipe for disaster in some ways,
Totally.
and I'm with you. I feel like that there have been many points in my life and career. I'd say more career centric, where I'm like, this isn't where I envision I would be at this age. And then
Right.
it ties into then you start comparing yourself to others around you,
Such a
and that
dangerous game. Yeah.
comparison's the thief of joy, right? Teddy Roosevelt said that, and it really rings true. But I think letting that go is really helpful. And, spontaneity, I think, can go in one of two ways. You were spontaneous in chasing equity, it didn't necessarily work, right? So I think
Right.
there's a bit of a double edged sword with that. But generally speaking, it's everyone has their own path. And being happy, I think, is first and foremost to just general success, whether it be life, career, family, and just enjoying your authentic path. Um, you never would have envisioned if you went back to the 90s that you'd be selling mapping centric software to the oil and gas industry in Houston, right?
No, it's so funny you say that because I remember having, I don't know if it's a fifth or sixth grade teacher, and she said, most of you will be doing a job that you had no idea existed when you get older, right? And
Mhm.
sure,
Fascinating.
sales existed, but yeah, I would have never in a million years thought that. No.
Yeah. Um, what's your favorite restaurant in Houston?
Oh man. Um, all right. If money's no object, uh, Papa Steakhouse. Love it,
That's a good
love it,
one.
love it. Yeah.
That's a
Now,
good one.
I now if we come down a level, I do bounce between Papacitos and Lupe as my favorite Mexican. But those two, and Papa Steakhouse, and you can't go wrong with Perry's either. But there's some good ones. So that's a tough
Perry's
one. But
good.
I will go with Money No Object, Papa Steakhouse.
I'm with that. I can get
Okay.
with that. I do love the Tex-Mex down there. I mean,
Oh
the
yeah,
food there in general is amazing. And Perry's,
outstanding.
what, today's Friday, so if you want, you can get
Get that big pork
the
chop.
biggest the biggest pork chop for lunch at an
Yeah,
affordable price, right?
absolutely,
That's funny.
absolutely.
Yeah, that you're making me hungry now for next week in Houston already. Um, from a career perspective, right? When you look back a little bit, can you pinpoint like what your favorite job was?
Hmm. It's funny. I would. There was two that stand out. It was my first couple years in sales. So I would say 2004, 2005, 2006, doing the treasury software. I enjoyed that thoroughly. And then I would say, my first the time at oil decks with Chris, right? Was probably, um,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking Chris would probably sit there and go, "Oh, he didn't sure act that way," but no, I loved every minute of it. It was so enjoyable. I was learning a lot. I was working for somebody who I respected a lot. It was just a lot of fun. And it's
Yeah.
funny because that's the key, right? They always say if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And there's been a couple of jobs there. You're like, oh, this is really torturous. But there's a few that you look back that I've enjoyed that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've gone back and forth on that statement a little bit. Like, yes, sure, that may very well be the case, but I mean, work is still work, right? And there's always sort of a void. Like my yeah, I love to just spend all my time with my family, but let's be honest, during the day, my kids are at school, my wife is at work. So if I wasn't working, whether I liked it or not, what would I be doing? You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
exactly,
I'm sure
exactly.
I probably be in better shape. I probably go to the gym all the time. I'd probably be a little bit more mindful and meditate more. Those are all good things, but you're not tapping into then your intellectual side. So whether you love it or not, it's sort of like you've got to do it, and especially at our ages. Although you're a little bit older than me. Finally, Mark, where can people find you if people want to reach out to you, if they want to learn more about Esri, if they want to connect with you, grab coffee in Houston and absorb some of your great energy? Where can people find Mark
Absolutely,
D'Alessio?
absolutely. You can find me on LinkedIn now. I'll let open the curtain a little bit. You have to search under Emil Mark D'Alessio because my birth name is Emil
Yeah.
by Mark. Yes,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
we
I
can get into
remember
that.
when I knew you as
Yeah,
Mark.
yes, absolutely.
That's funny.
Yeah, yeah. So, but I'm on LinkedIn. Also, if people are interested in Esri in general, Esri.com, right? Great information there. But yeah, I love kind of like you probably while we're in the jobs where I love people. I love talking to people. So, if you saw
Yeah.
this and anything interests you, absolutely, just reach out. I'm always happy to bounce my ideas about about oil and gas or about what I'm doing, and I love to hear from people. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think if I had my druthers and say I was the person running a larger oil and gas tech company, to me, you would be like the very natural partnerships person. Like,
No,
I
thank you,
think that
appreciate
you
that.
really did. Yeah, you're welcome. You put a good face on for the companies that you worked at, thinking back really to, I guess it still would have been Oil Decks days or
Hmm.
Open Invoice days. You were the partner guy. And I think for a lot of people, that is a more passive role. I think for you, like you really sat down with your partners and created and
Yeah.
cultivated relationships that then led to business opportunities. So I have a great deal of respect for you in that role, and I'm sure in this sales role that you're in for Esri, you're doing and going to do a great job. So I really appreciate your patience and me rescheduling you like 3 or 4 times, and then finally coming on. But yeah, you made this a lot of fun, Mark. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. A ton of respect for you as well. I think I mentioned when the way I ended up getting introduced to you was Chris, who believe he's
Yeah.
not paying me for these plugs, but Chris had said, "Hey, you got to reach out to Jeremy. I worked with him. He's a great resource, great person, and he was not wrong. You really are. And I appreciate your patience. I know I had some background some background noise a little bit, but
It's all good, man.
I appreciate your patience. And hey, man, next week let me know if you have any free time. Love to catch up and have a cold beverage with you.
You got it, brother. Take care.
All right.